Flashpoint is a new idea. It's a new way to introduce the players to the world of Star Trek. But apart from that, it's the reimagination of how the events in the game and the missions in the game interact with each other.
So initially it was, what's the next step for Star Trek Fleet Command? How can we expand on this and make it a dynamic world, a living galaxy? What does that look like? And then also about what can we provide to our players who are community driven.
When we consider games and when we consider especially 4X and strategy titles, they revel in creating competition and conflict and like battles and war between players who've been progressing for years. And some of that is in Star Trek, but I'll be frank, we have an entire collection of players who are the most diplomatic and open and constructive communicators that we could see in a strategy title. The amount of self-imposed rules and structures that are organically growing inside in our community, the way they approach what we've put out, the way they discuss it, the way they come together, is phenomenal.
Flashpoints are a new multi-month series of events. It's really building off of the excitement and engagement that we saw around the Sarris Invasion events. And what we wanted to do was take that to the next level.
What makes Flashpoint different from all of the previous Star Trek Fleet Command events and arcs and narratives is that it's event focused and it is made to engage players, make them participate in many more new events, interact with each other, interact both with the event system and the mission system.
We wanted to put something in the game that wasn't just a one-off boss that you had to fight, but what if the actual whole universe was something that you had to fight back against? And actually, driving back invasions, not just in one single system, but across the whole galaxy map.
Players will need to work together to push back Horok. And once they push back Horok, they will be rewarded, one, visually in the galaxy view that they've made a change. And then also exclusive rewards.
As some of our players might remember, before we released the Wrath of Khan arc, there were some interesting missions that would hint at the future events, and Flashpoint is no exception. So be on the lookout, there might be something interesting you're going to miss or not.
When thinking about the concept of Flashpoint and the future of Star Trek, one thing that really drove down to create this Flashpoint experience was why players are playing the game, and that's the community side.
So as we look at the future of Fleet Command, we've been considering the past 6-7 years of what we have put live. One of the things we've really considered is the universe itself is relatively static. It is something that you log in, the dynamism in how we're playing with is coming from either the events that we're running or the interaction with other players, obviously bringing a lot of dynamic nature to your day-to-day, and it's pretty rote, and you just keep working through it. And we want to make that different.
So initially it was, what's the next step for Star Trek Fleet Command? How can we expand on this and make it a dynamic world, a living galaxy? What does that look like? Reusing existing tech with small improvements, what can we give to our players that will provide that dynamic feel, that narrative-driven experience?
There will be missions and there will be events that will explain how each single action affects the world. And it will, as in every Star Trek story, affect the world greatly.
We want it to be that when you come into Fleet Command, potentially every day, you're asking a question about what's happening in the universe today. What's different? What do I need to do? We'll be tipping our toes in the water of that as we go through July with Flashpoints. That will be a case of looking at how can I, as a player, interact with something in the world and make a difference? And how can we as an alliance or as a server have a direct impact on the universe and the entities and factions and hostiles that exist inside there through our own actions.
Depending on your support of this or that side, depending on the intensity of your participation, the amount of effort you've invested in this or that specific event, it will be reflected in the world, in the galaxy view. It's not just a thing that you complete and leave behind, it's a thing that you complete and then you have to live with the consequences. Flashpoint will be divided into 3 separate arcs united by the same idea.
So just to make it clear, with Flashpoint, Part 1 and Part 2 and the multi-arc experience will be the first iteration. So in Flashpoint Part 1, players will be introduced to this new resource, and this will start off as a typical day. But then what will happen is that a rebel Klingon group will go rogue and then capture these systems. Once these systems are captured, the only way to get rid of Horok, to really push them back, is for players to come together. But what ends up happening, and what is the big shift with Flashpoint compared to other ARC releases, is that players will go into this mining loop, this transient loop, day 1, day 2, and then on day 3, then the status quo will shift. It's kind of like a table flip, and that's when this rebel Klingon group, House Horok, capture these systems. At that stage, players will have to band together in order to push it back.
What we do before approaching any big arc or big release is we make a rough high-level plan where we decide what kind of story beats are going to be in each and every month. And since we know that we are working for a greater good, which is the Flashpoint, we know what kind of effort and what kind of story beats we're planning and we're working on. We're gonna have a big overarching story that will last 6 months, but within that story, we're also gonna have 2-month subdivisions, if I can call it like that, which will cover the aspects of the bigger storyline. The story is gonna get more complex because now the players will have to think of how their actions will hold on throughout the half-year period, but also the players will be able to focus on a smaller, more condensed, yet nonetheless interesting storyline. In my case, since my storyline is in the middle, it will be both a separate and standalone story. However, its effects and the narrative that is flowing through it will be continuing the first 2 months and resulting in the 5th and 6th month.
We want to make it a living universe that people are part of, and make sure that when you come in, you're looking at what's happening between the factions, what's changing in terms of what people are playing.
Each month, players will have to gain knowledge via collecting broken pieces of intel. And then also in the flip side, if players aren't successful, or maybe they don't see the need to engage, but when they see other people, other servers have actually engaged and are actually successful and have these launch exclusive rewards, then that will build a hype with more players.
If I were to give a clue or a hint to what is going to happen in the middle of Flashpoint, it's going to be what if?
So within Flashpoint Part 1 and 2, players will be introduced to this new resource that basically crash landed in Star Trek Fleet Command Galaxy. It's even like changed faction borders for it to fit into our galaxy. When I say that it's unstable and quite powerful, is the idea that this is a new resource that players have never interacted with before. And then once managed, then they can reuse that to consolidate specialized loops. What I want from our commanders is to be really excited about why they want to interact with the resource as a whole at first. Then when it comes to when the Klingon rebel group House Horok invade, what I want from players is like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Like the galaxy has changed. There's like a new faction border that wasn't there 5 minutes ago, is there now. That initial is just like, this is not normal, what is going on here? And that excitement from the players that day one, everything feels normal, but they're excited about this new resource. And then it to flip to, yeah, something is different here, and I want to find out more.
What am I being asked to do, and how can I solve that? And it's not just a rerun of a previous event that you know how to solve. there's novelty and there's interest, and the actual setting you're solving it in is changing as well. Hostiles are moving, things are in different places, minds are operating differently. A faction has taken over some extra space, a new faction has entered into the board. You need to push them back. You need to push them back as an entire server, or as an entire region, or as an entire game. You are fighting back against the force that we've introduced into the universe.
So with Flashpoint, it's again, what can we give those players to really deepen that community without overstepping on what they've done and create this artificial experience?
This time, it's not just this universe that's gonna affect the events of Star Trek. Players might expect some transdimensional shifts or guests from unexpected areas of space and new resources to work with to fight the enemies and restore the balance.
Those concepts of creating this living environment over the coming years on Star Trek is where we're going. And because I believe we can do those things, that's why I'm excited about what we're going to do next.